You're listening to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, a podcast designed to explore the personal mission of everyday leaders. Hear from men and women who are making a difference in their corner of the world and discover what keeps them on mission.
Welcome to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis. I'm Jonathan Sheely. Our guest today is Taylor Pill, Director of Athletic Communications and Associate Head Coach for the men's soccer at Maranatha. Taylor lives in Watertown and is a 2015 MBU alumnus. His first job was a site administrator for U.S. Soccer. Taylor plays for the Milwaukee Wave, a professional indoor soccer team with the goal of winning the MASL Eastern Conference this season. His favorite team is Liverpool FC and any Boston team. Taylor's favorite meal is salmon, and he enjoys golf, skiing, and spending time with his fiancée, Kristen. Brother, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
That last little bit of the bio is a new addition. Fiancé, how's that sound?
Fiancé sounds great. It's we're going here on a week and a half being engaged, so
That's why the sides of his face are still kind of bent.
Yeah, he's like stuck in a smile. I haven't seen this guy so happy in a long time.
cheeks are still a little bit sore, that's for sure. So
She is also a soccer player.
she is a
Kind of
soccer
a good
player.
one, too, from what I hear.
Kind of a good one. Now, I want to be careful with what I say here because we are venturing into some unknown territory, but she has won 3 national championships for a school in South Carolina and on the NCCA Division II level, and second in her sophomore year they got second in the national final. So
Wow.
she has more rings than I do, that's for sure.
Well, maybe she can help you
She can help you
step
out.
up a little bit.
She already has, really. So
Clearly.
let's just get that out the open right away.
I mean, I feel indebted to her myself. You know, I mean, she finally, made this guy happy. I mean, he's been miserable moping around here for years. So that's a great service that she's provided for
Yes.
Maranatha. So we'll let her pedigree slide just a little bit.
Yeah, well.
So looking to seal that deal a little bit later this year, and that's going to be an exciting thing.
Yes.
And you are a Liverpool fan, and I think your dad on the podcast explained a little bit about the culture of some of that stuff, but I got into it a couple of years ago. You've been into it a lot longer than that. How long have you been a Liverpool fan?
I've been a Liverpool fan since I was 7 years old. Thank you for asking, because
Yes.
I hate being accused of being a bandwagoner.
Yeah, because they're really good now. They were really, really good a couple of years ago. They're not quite as good this year, but so I'm the bandwagon guy. Like, my son got me into it, and they were always good since I've known. But when you got into it, they probably weren't that great.
They weren't that great, and there have been some definite low points. I think 2014, Stevie G slipping and the title slipping away from us with his cleats. So there's been moments like that that have been tough to take, low point seasons where we just have been underperforming. So it's been fun to enjoy winning the league, winning the Champions League, and all the highs and lows that have come in between.
And you play for the Milwaukee Wave. I've had the chance to see you play in your first professional game with that team last year. Got the chance to see you do that. And then you've played in 2 games this year. And is it true that every single time you have played for the Wave this year, you have scored a goal?
That is true.
That is
Can
amazing.
confirm.
What is
Great
wrong with your
stats.
coach? Why
Great
would you not be in every minute of every game? In fact, in your first game, you scored every single time you shot.
Every time I shot. And statistically, this is what the league website says. Statistically, every time I shoot the ball, I score. So
2 for 2.
all I can say
All
is
time.
efficiency. If you are going only by offensive efficiency, I am the man. If you have other areas to consider, then
I mean,
that's another conversation.
Let's
Roll the clap.
I could represent you. We could get a contract thing going on right now.
Hey, why not?
Let's
Why
call
not?
Liverpool.
Let's call Liverpool. Hey, when this guy shoots, he scores.
I
So,
mean,
hey,
what
just
else
put him
could
in.
you ask for on the soccer field? Well, you also were part of Maranatha's national champion team back in the day. What year was that?
That was 2014,
2014. Your senior year.
my senior year.
How cool was that?
That was a moment I will never forget.
Yeah.
And it is both parts of the lead up on the team and the guys that I was able to do it with. And
Yeah.
what an honor. And so just some of the guys on that squad.
Well, you can name names. You can drop some names if you
Well,
want.
we have to say Wirrawama for anybody
Absolutely.
that's listening, and Drew DeLozier, who he didn't get as much hype as Wira probably, but was and I'm not going to say he was underrated, but what a player they both
one of the
were.
most incredible goals ever scored. And he was a backline defender, wasn't he?
He was a defender,
but he scored one of the most incredible goals I've ever seen in soccer, period.
No kidding. So for those that don't, check out MBU Sabercats Instagram. Scroll down. There is a video of Drew scoring in the national championship. He scored from 45 yards against a keeper who was ready for the shot. Now, that's what people know. For those that had followed that win, they know about Drew's goal and they talk about Drew's goal. What they don't know is that he was practicing that shot for weeks leading up to it. Drew went out with one of his buddies and they bought 24 practice Adidas balls, and he would go 45 minutes before practice and he would be shooting that shot because as a defensive player, that's the only shot he was going to get. Right. And Drew could create that shot. Now, Drew was also amazing at going forward, and he was the best center back I've ever played with at countering. And he would just have this instinct of when to go. But he would try that shot, and he tried it in training. He tried it in a couple games. You can go back and see it. And it never pulled off because that shot is an amazingly low percentage.
Very low
shot.
Percentage.
But he pulled it out right when he needed to. And I still remember that game. I was in space.
I'm getting chills with you.
I'm getting excited right now. I was in space. I was ahead of Drew. I was barking my head off because I wanted that ball. I was at the spot where I like to shoot from, which is about 25 yards. And I was screaming, Drew, give me the ball. And he shoots it over my head, basically. And I'm thinking, you selfish little. Okay. He scores and we go crazy. So it was a moment never forget. But Drew's impact on both sides of the ball was incredible. And then people talk about Weira, his ability to draw defenders and his improvisation and creativity with the ball going forward. He's one of the best players I've been able to play with. I mean, I think technically he never was a professional player, but it comes down to semantics at that point. He played for his national team. Mm-hmm. He played for a full-time team, Hikari, and he was every bit a pro. And so he was just skill level. He was unparalleled. And so, and his team, the team that he played for.
I miss Weira. He's back in Papua New Guinea, and I think he's still working with their national team. Is he?
He's heavily involved with soccer over there for sure.
Yeah, so pretty awesome. Neat alumni of note. That's what it says on our Wikipedia.
No kidding. No kidding. He's a capped national team player. So at the international level, it's incredible. So
that is pretty incredible. So when you're not playing soccer and thinking about soccer, it's golf, where you worked for the local golf course a couple of summers, I know, growing up, and that led to some pretty good game on the golf course. And I always enjoy it when we get to play together. And skiing? Is there a lot of skiing here in Wisconsin? Where did you pick that up?
I picked it up in New Hampshire, where I grew up. So it was Mount Sunapee, Ragged, Gunstock, and Loon, for anybody that knows New Hampshire ski slopes, which is probably maybe one listener. So that's what we did regularly throughout the winters.
We could play the game. Is it a ski resort in New Hampshire or a mid-tier Premier League?
Yeah, right. Right, which is pretty close. Yeah. So I learned it there, and then Wisconsin. No offense, Wisconsin, but you have the audacity to call these places mountains, and they are not.
Well, I think one of them is just like a converted garbage dump that gets snow that falls on top.
Yes,
they call it Hot Dog Mountain or whatever.
Can basically confirm. So it's but no, we went skiing once. Went over to Cascade, and so for Wisconsin, great place to go. So shout out to Cascade, where I grew up. Let's just say they don't compare. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, so on the show, this is the hard transition this time from fun to serious, and we know you have good answers to this. So we ask all of our guests, Taylor, what's your mission in life?
My mission in life is to glorify my God, my Father, by becoming like his son through the word, and to obey him according to that construct. And that works itself out in specifics. So where I'm at right now, I believe that he's given me talents and abilities, and I'm responsible to steward those talents, and in a way that is that reflects his son's character, and in a way that is specific to my abilities, opportunities, and my desires. And so where I'm at in just a season of life right now, soccer, of course, is a big part of my life. It always has been. And then just the work I do full-time here for the university with doing athletic communications. So it has specific principles, commands that I'm focusing on in that season of life, but bringing him honor and glory is the most important thing.
I want to spend some time and really kind of pull that apart a little bit, because I think it's not uncommon for Christian folks, when we ask them that question, to begin with glorifying God as our highest mission in life. But you said something that I think is really important to follow on with that very broad statement, and that was that you're saying, according to that construct, it works itself out in specifics with my talents, my abilities as a stewardship. Right. So what do you mean by the stewardship aspect of that in relation to how you can use those things to glorify God?
So the stewardship aspect refers to ownership. And I believe that everything that I have is a gift from my Father. And so I'm using the Bible as my authority for that. And every good and perfect gift is from above. We see in James. And so with that in mind, I'm not my own. God has given me everything that I have. And so I am taking care of the gifts in the way that he wants me to take care of them. So we have an ownership and we have a perspective that comes from the Lord and not from me. So I can have my own ideas, but I have to tailor my own ideas through his word.
So you're saying it's an ownership. These are a gift from God, but they're retained ownership, and I'm the possessor of them. Mm-hmm. But you also indicate it's a responsibility. It's a burden, but not in the weight sense. It's a duty on my part to do something with them. So can you give me an example of that?
Yeah. So let me just take soccer as a starting point, and it refers to what my goal is when I interact with fellow players and players that I coach. So in an achievement world, and soccer is an achievement world, from a worldly standpoint, what I'm saying is the world system, its values. The idea is to advance yourself at all costs. And so it's an achievement mindset. God calls me to love him with everything and to love my neighbor as myself. And so that's going to dictate certain things that I do. So I'm going to approach a team construct through the lens of love. And that is a counterculture idea if there ever was one. Now,
very much so.
There are specific ways in which you show that. That depends on your relationship with the person. And that depends on your ability to put the best interest and truth in front of your own ego and your own advancement. And that's a challenging line. And when we talk about playing for the Milwaukee Wave, for example, exactly how to do that is something I'm constantly trying to figure out through Scripture.
Okay, so it's very common in sports, especially those who achieve it at the highest levels, for them to be laser focused on their own performance, their physical body, keeping themselves fit at the highest levels, even improving their strength and conditioning and their technique and their skills. They practice things over and over and over again to achieve the best results for them personally. So in that sense, I suppose they are exercising the same level of stewardship as a believer can and should do properly to achieve the same kinds of success. But now you're adding to that a dimension of love, not for just myself, which is the most common and natural thing out there, but for others, right? And I think you're pointing out now all of a sudden a difference. Does that take away from the personal responsibility for preparation, or how does that change your mindset and your approach to that personal responsibility?
No, it enhances it because the whole thing is a stewardship. So we focus on it is bound by God's word. And so he calls me to love, but he calls me to excellence. And Ecclesiastes 9:10, whatever your hand finds to do it with your might. Colossians 3:23, whatsoever you do, work heartily as to the Lord, not unto men. For you serve the Lord Christ. So there is an element of effort and excellence that you put into your craft, but you're doing it in a way that would honor the Lord. And so that is the construct that compels me to love. So yes, my responsibility, put all the work into my game. So you can go to a wave training session and you will see me take the field about 30 minutes, 45 minutes prior, and I'll be working on what my game needs. And then you'll see me in the gym in the off days or in the evenings, and I'm trying to get stronger. I'm trying to stay fit, mobility, all that stuff, because I'm called to excellence. And at that level, you have to do those things if you want to hang. And so it is a matter not of trying to advance myself, though, but just doing soccer through God's word and the principles that he's laid out for me. So you don't neglect
your personal training regimen
and
say, well, I'm just about others.
No.
I'm
no.
I'm a Christian, so I don't care about my own personal fitness. I mean, I see, frankly, a lot of Christian people kind of let themselves go. I certainly did for a long time in my own life, where it was like all about this work, and I sort of rode a desk for like 15 years, and then I woke up one day and went, man, I am so out of shape. This is ridiculous. And I mean, I'm not you. All right, I'm not a beast in the weight room or out on the field, but there is a level of personal hard work that does have to be put in, and it's useful. And in your paradigm, it's almost like that's also a spiritual discipline.
Yeah. And let me just be really clear. I'm playing for a team now where if we don't win, our jobs are on the line. So we got to win. Like, it's one of the ways I can love people. This is going to sound like a duh statement. Let's help the team win, right? That's an easy place to start. What's the goal of sports? You ask any 4-year-old in the room. Win, right? Yeah. And so especially
have fun. Rule number one now is to have fun.
Yeah,
right?
not at the.
And
yeah,
I always
you
say,
try telling that
fun?
to pro.
Winning.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Winning is fun.
Yeah.
So and at the pro
they
level,
don't even keep score though. In a lot of these youth leagues. And I always would say, well, are we having more fun than the other team? So it's kind of like, are we winning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. What's the standard? So yeah, at a professional level, I mean, you try selling anything else but winning as the primary value goal. It's you're going to get laughed out of the room. So in that place, it's you have to win. And so so it's like, no, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I'm just gonna love guys, winning, preparation, whatever. I'm just here to love. No, I wouldn't even be allowed in the door, because that comes with a mindset of just you're slacking off on your role. You have to do your role, and you have to do your role as best you can. That's the only way that if we want to win the Eastern Conference for the Wave, everybody's got to be doing their role.
Is that one of the big differences you notice stepping into the professional ranks? And you spent some time overseas and some of that too, and saw like, eye-opening, another culture, another level. Is that one of the big differences you see? Is like there's not anybody in that locker room that isn't kind of laser focused, or are there still guys that are sort of coasting on inordinate natural talent and just like you're jealous of? They just have gifts that I wish I had.
No, it's laser focus.
Yeah.
And sure, there's different personalities, and some guys, the way they play the best is to relax and loosen up, because that allows them to express themselves on the field and their creativity, and that's just who they are as a player and who they are as a person. So they are expressing themselves through their play. But no, every man in that locker room is there to win, and it's business. And if you are out of line, you will get put back into line just as quickly as you got out of line.
Not necessarily even by the coaches.
No, even by the players. The amount of accountability in that locker room with the guys that have made that organization a success, Ian Bennett, Marcio Leite, I could just go down the list.
Yeah.
Name a lot more names than just them. The culture there is a winning culture.
I heard you have 2 Steinwashers now.
2 Steinwashers. we lost one. He got picked up in the USL. But 2 Steinwashers. Yeah, Javi is still with us. He has developed into such a key player in such a short amount of time. Yeah. He came from the outdoor game last season. He has fit the indoor game like a glove, and it seems to be like the way he's playing. It seems to be like his speaking his natural language. Like
this almost. Was where he belongs.
Yeah. So and he's good outdoor.
Let me see if I can synthesize that for a minute, though, because that's a really crucial section. It is loving others to do your part.
It's a way we love others is by doing our own part.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Carrying our weight.
Yeah. Right. Kind of putting it all together. Because what might look like sometimes is you going by yourself when to go do your work. And it may not look on face value that you're doing something for others if you're by yourself, but actually you pulling your weight in the gym by yourself is loving the guys around you.
Yeah, because if you're part of the Milwaukee Wave, you are there to win, and you're there to do it in the Wave's way.
Right.
But that's the goal.
So does that team have its own way? I mean, do you guys talk about the values of that particular team, and is that part of your discussion?
Yeah, there's a strong culture there, and our coach Giuliano Oliviero, Tenzin Rampa, they are remarkably clear in how they want us to play. And so our identity on the field are what we are trying to do tactically and otherwise is everybody knows it. We're on the same page.
I'm always fascinated as not a high-level player of sports, but a fan, in these metaphysical connections between values and character qualities that are discussed off the field in almost spiritual ways, whether it's a professional team or whatever. And then on the field, tactics and movements and even the individual skills that these players have to execute, right? Like these ethereal values are not going to win the game unless they are translated into on the field realities.
Right.
And I'm really fascinated by the invisible connections between those things and how a good coach, like you mentioned your two coaches and of course your dad, Coach Pill, here for our teams, and I believe you're stepping into that same role, that how to translate that onto the on-field performance and outcomes is really kind of a fascinating role of the coach.
It really is a fascinating role, and you have to know what it's like to be a player. Now that's where I'm in a really cool spot right now because I'm playing for a team that stresses and challenges me in my ability as a player, and I can take that part and translate it back to the coaching role here at Maranatha. But you have to understand the challenges of the game mentally and emotionally and be able to translate what makes your character translatable to the field and what virtues can you hold as a person that will then hopefully in the stress and the heat of the moment come out in a way that will help you. And so you have to be acquainted with the challenges from the player's perspective.
So when my son, who plays for the team, was in high school, he played on some club teams and he played for his high school team. And you had all different levels of coaching experience and style and all of that. And it was amazing to watch how, I mean, I've been watching this kid play soccer since he was born, right? I know he's got athletic ability, but it needs to be honed and inspired, and all of those things. And you could see how his performance changed depending on the team's culture and what was asked of him, how clearly it was communicated. And there were teams that were better or higher level teams where he just seemed to disappear. And then at another level where it was like he could be the star of the show, and that's a pretty fascinating thing about the culture of a program that converts it. That's one of the reasons I was so excited about the idea that he might be able to play for Maranatha soccer, because you guys have that kind of chemistry and that culture of a team that really tries to make the most of every individual's toolkit that they bring to the table.
Exactly. And we have a pyramid of core beliefs that we adhere to as coaches. And when my dad was on the podcast, I'm sure he at least referenced it.
Oh, yeah.
At the very least. So
but we didn't show it.
Yeah, let's show that. Yeah, there it is. So this is what you're alluding to. So your son, when he has been on different teams, there's been a different culture to those teams. And that brings out certain things in his play. Mm-hmm. And I would even go a step farther to say that brings certain things out of him as a person, his personality, even his demeanor, his buy-in. Yeah. And so let's just zoom out real quick and we can just talk to the coaches maybe listening or the leaders listening and just make sure we know what culture actually is. And the way we understand it is culture is a combination of what you allow and what you expect. And so that is what we try to set as a framework for coaches. So what we allow is shown when we reinforce negative behavior or behavior that does not align with the values of the team. And so the way we do that as here at Maranatha, we have what's called committee. And any player listening knows, they know who they are that have been on the committee. And what the committee is if you get out of line in some way, you are placed on committee. And committee is responsible to do any little thing that is undesirable, such as moving goals, washing pennies if they need to be washed, getting gear out of the shed. It's just all the little things until someone else gets out of line and they get off committee. right? So the committee is always a cycle. And
it's an opportunity to serve the team and reflect upon your actions.
And believe me, we have some frequent flyers on committee. You know who you are if you're listening to this. So it's what you allow and it's what you expect. And so what you expect is you reinforce when somebody embodies the values of the team. And we do that with voting on team captains. Team captains they're based on this pyramid, not necessarily on who the best player is.
Okay.
And you hope they'd be the same, and certainly excellence is on our pyramid, and so it's an inherent part of who you are. But we do that by voting on captains according to the pyramid and voting on team awards at the end of the season according to the pyramid. We don't give an offensive MVP here. We don't give a defensive MVP. We give qualities of the heart award, qualities of mind, qualities of action. Jamie Odell Memorial Leadership Award, which is basically the entire pyramid. It's a leadership aspect, and a process award, which is the foundation. So going back to your son on different teams, he has been allowed to be an influence in the way that he should be an influence. And he brings to the table what he is good at, and he is fit on a good team, on a positive culture team. He'll be fit according to his ability, what he has to offer. It's a personal management idea. So if you look at the pyramid, process orientation is the foundation of the pyramid. And so
we'll put it up larger so that it can be seen clearly here. So process orientation. That sounds boring. I thought soccer was supposed to be fun. Process? What's process got to do with it?
Process. So yes, we talked about soccer being all about winning. Process is how you manage yourself as a player. So this pyramid is for the player as well as for the team. And so we believe when we say that someone is process-oriented, we believe that we evaluate ourselves based on controllable things. Winning is not in your control entirely. You can influence your ability to win,
right?
But you can't control it because there will always be a better team than you, unless you're Liverpool, right? Because Liverpool's the best team in the world.
Yeah.
So evaluations are based on controllable things. This is what the pyramid says under process orientation. It's the execution of the 4 pillars of the game, which are technique, tactics, fitness, and psychology, and Christ-likeness. That's how you make evaluations for yourself and for other people if that is what you're tasked with. So as a player, when you self-manage, you're looking at things that are completely under your control. You're not necessarily looking at, do you make the starting 11? Are you all-region? Are you all-American? Are you a goal scorer? Because those things are influenced by other people. So to express your identity as a player, as a person, you reflect on those controllable things. And then we have the pyramid is under the player's control. They have the ability to demonstrate these virtues and to uphold these values. So the cornerstones of the pyramid, we have improvement and enthusiasm. And for improvement, we believe that every situation you're in is an opportunity to improve, not a threat to fail. So that'll be a player's license to just go for it and to put themselves out there, to make mistakes, to try things they are not currently able to do.
There's risk and reward that has to be constantly calculated and recalculated in every situation 1,000 times or more during a game.
Exactly.
And, whether that fullback is going to make a run forward and abandon his defensive position in order for the possibility of an offensive attack, and now burning it back on a counterattack and trying to recover position. And you can see some players are more oriented that way versus others. Some are better at recovery than others. But those are kind of those individual decisions that all work together to try and build forward and, put pressure on goal.
Exactly.
And so you see that as, sort of part of this thing where you're not going to punish somebody for taking a risk if it was the right risk to take,
right?
Even if it doesn't result in a goal.
That's exactly right. And so that block, being one of our cornerstones to the pyramid itself, is purposeful because we think if you have that in your mindset as a player, that every time you step onto the field, training, game, and like team training and personal training, and even in a game, every situation is an opportunity for you to improve. So it hopefully will be a motivating idea, and it will encourage them to be assertive and take risks, get out of their comfort zone. So that is closely related to enthusiasm, which is the other cornerstone. And you take away the cornerstones and the pyramid falls apart. So we believe that these traits are there for a reason, And if you don't have these traits, none of the other things are going to happen. Enthusiasm is a passion for the team and for improvement. So we connect enthusiasm, which is on the bottom right of the pyramid, to improvement on the bottom left. And we say that if you're not actually bought into this system and this idea, you're not going to fit. And so a player that is enthusiastic will demonstrate that in certain ways. They will train on their own if they have the schedule to do it. Obviously, it's not everybody's reality, but they will show up to training early. They will be running from field to field to get themselves better, save time, all that stuff. And so those are key traits of any player in their control that allow them to express themselves and the values of the team in the way that's appropriate for them.
All right. And so then on the inside of that first row, you have humility and patience. So, humility in athletics is kind of a stretch fit, right? Like a lot of people get into athletics so that they can be celebrated and rewarded personally with achievement.
Right. And this brings us to the reality that every block on this pyramid is also, it's not only a character of Christ-likeness, which is a teaser for the top of it, but it is also a trait of a mentally strong athlete. And so these are where the two correlate, and that's where you see God's genius in making his word apply to every area of our life, even, dare we say, a game where you have to kick a ball into a net. And right. in a culture that's highly competitive, because in America we value sports very highly, and therefore we have a lot of college teams. These players are good. And so these guys that we have here, they're going up against teams in the area that are very good, and they have to be mentally strong. So humility, the idea is that you seek what is right and best and not who is right and best. And so that has implications. You are going to do what fits our system as a player, not what fits your own preferences. You're going to let the guy that is better at taking free kicks take the free kicks, not you. Right? Mm-hmm. So, and we try to instill that, and that shows itself in certain ways. So humility isn't this deferential, like, I'm bad. We have this false sense of humility. It's people have said it's thinking of yourself less, which I think is a great way to look at it, or having an accurate view of yourself, which is both are a great way to look at it. So if I think I'm the best free kick taker, I'm going to put myself on the ball, because I think maybe I have to ask my coaches, am I good? You want me on the ball? They will tell me. And at Maranatha, we are very clear as coaches who we want taking set pieces, because we are very clear who we don't want taking set pieces on sometimes. So you have to have that humility to see yourself accurately. Mm-hmm. And then patience, that block applies for the guys specifically that are either struggling with their game or are struggling to get the goals that they want to get, both in literal goals, scoring a goal in a game, and actually goals like making the starting 11 or making all-region, all-American, stuff like that, wherever they're making the team, right? Whatever their goal may be. And so those blocks apply there.
I've been doing the live stream commentary for the soccer team for a few years now, and as we've been able to develop that hardware to make it work out on the soccer field, and I have noticed that a lot of our goals come not from beautiful individual efforts, although there have been a few that you just go, well, that was unassisted. But a lot of our goals come from just team pressure, where it just constantly builds, and all of a sudden it starts to feel inevitable, and then the ball's in the net. And it's almost hard for me, many times it has been hard for me to even determine who actually touched it last and made it go in the net, because it's just constant until, like, not all 11, but most of them are right there, and then it's in the net, right? And right. I think that's a reflection of what you're talking about with this pyramid. Like, everybody is working together and building up and doing their job to contain, right. And eventually the result is achieved.
Exactly. And so that's where it's not about who is right and best, it's about what is right and best, putting the team in the best situation to score. And that can mean anything. I know this last year we had a great overtime goal. Grant Kirchner shoots it, keeper deflects it up towards the back post, and Isaac Schmidt is crashing into the back post. Oh, man. Just in case Grant misses, and Isaac has probably a 1-foot header that he needed to have to win the game, and he got it done. And a lot of people thought Grant scored. But we saw that Isaac did, and so he's doing his
if Isaac
job.
decides, you know what, it's hopeless. I'm not going to make that run. I've made that run 8 times already this game and got nothing out of it. I'm just going to hang back and, see what happens, chill, see if I get a rebound. No, he's constantly pushing ahead. And that tenacity, that determination was, what gave the result in that particular situation.
Exactly.
All right, so work us up to the next level.
So we got initiative, character, and resilience as qualities of the mind. So we talked about those foundational pieces. We think those are more qualities of the heart. And so we transition to qualities of the mind, which is how you think. Imagine that, right? Easy to draw that conclusion. So initiative is that you have courage to improve the situation. And so that may mean speaking up if you have an idea. That may mean collecting the balls because we need balls near the field to keep our time on task high. But you have the freedom and you have the authority and the responsibility as a player to improve the situation that exists for you, even in small ways. And so that will show itself in different ways. Guys seeking coaches out to talk about an off-season training program. How can I get better as a player? Guys seeing that, hey, we have 1 ball around the grid right now, so let's go and get 4 balls so we can bring them in so that we don't have to spend time during our work interval to go collect the ball and bring it back. Let's try to get better, right? So that's what that initiative block means, and it's giving them the license to actually take action. They shouldn't have to wait for the coaches to say you need to get better.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed Coach Pill and when you're out there, other Coach Pill, backup Coach Pill,
Coach Pill Jr.
Associate Pill.
No.
You guys are not joysticking, the players out there. Hey, you get up forward. That's a big difference in youth soccer. I mean, the coaches are usually a dad, and we're just like yelling from the sideline, go up here, do this. Yeah. There's a lot of autonomy and trust, I guess, on your part. I see a lot of comments to the other bench players going on like, okay, what was that all about? And I've seen your dad ask guys on the bench why a player on the field did what he did, and I'm like, did they text him or how did they
text him?
What was he thinking?
Right. And this is where the pyramid. We need to make sure this is also for the coaches, because if we don't hold ourselves to this standard, then our enforcement of this standard means nothing. Mm-hmm. And so with humility as coaches, we think that our end goal as coaches should be to become irrelevant. And so the idea is that we can train them during the week and we can actually join the fans in the stands and watch them do it. Now, that's not reality. You have to make adjustments on the fly, and that's what we're there for. But we teach the players the principles so that they can self-evaluate and self-monitor, and self-regulate. And so that's the idea. So, yeah, we want to give players that freedom and that autonomy, absolutely. So we equip them, and then we let them fly on their own.
There is a block here called resilience, and that's not in great abundant supply in our culture right now.
No.
Are you finding that there's a lot of work that has to be done to help a player become resilient? What is it that builds that character quality?
It really, as a player, you build resilience by being resilient, which kind of sounds funny, but that is a mental skill that you have to practice, and you have to learn how not to do it and how to do it. And how to do it is a lot more lasting. So that is a block for the mindset during the game, and certainly after the game. But we put that in the pyramid because that is in the moment of the game when I miss the shot that I should make or I miss the play that I should make, I need to be resilient. We say that being resilient is focusing on what you are presently experiencing, not the uncontrollable past or future.
There's a connection between resilience and what we talk about as being the momentum of a game.
Yeah.
And when you're on the right side of that momentum, if you feel unstoppable, and that's wonderful. But if you're on the wrong side of the momentum, now that's where resilience comes in to try and push that game back the other way and overcome what has now become some adversity in this particular contest.
Right. And what we teach players is that to be resilient, focus on what is happening right now. Because you're exactly right. It's so hard to overcome the momentum. And if you as a player say, don't think about what that last play was, then it doesn't register in your brain because it doesn't understand the word don't. And we know this. Anybody that's studied psychology or sports psychology, if I think don't think of a strawberry, too late. right? So we teach them focus on what is right in front of you right now. So if a player comes and they say, how do I correct a mistake? We just say, defend. Because if you made a mistake, odds are the opponent has the ball. So get your confidence back up with your defending. Mm-hmm. And so it's what is going on in front of you at the moment. And it's very hard. Resilience is a rare trait. And the reality is you are an emotional being, and your emotions get affected by negative outcomes. And so resilience
it can happen
because
because you made a mistake. It can happen because the other player had better skill than you did in that particular attack. They defended well and dispossessed. It can happen because of conditions.
Right.
The field, the weather, the referees, all these things. And I see guys, it happens in the girls' game too. I see the blood pressure rise and we get angry, we get disgusted, we start to blow back and blow up, and all of those things are counterproductive to the next thing that needs to happen. What happened in the past is irrelevant now. We need to move forward ahead to do the right thing now.
Right.
And like you said, that's probably defense now. But we always want to try to blame something else for the current conditions rather than just take the conditions as they are and deal with them.
Right. Right. And that was what ties the resilience block back to process orientation, our foundation. Is the player has to be totally focused on what they can control, because it wastes your energy to focus on those other things. But your default setting is to focus on those other things. That's what makes this hard. If this was all automatic, this wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Resilience is not our default setting.
No.
We have to train ourselves for that. And so that's why we have that in place. It's just, hey, it's going to be a mental battle out there. You got to equip yourself beforehand. That's why we go through this in preseason before games start. We have the players teach this to the players because we believe that what you teach to other people, it's easier to learn yourself.
Well, it's even harder when you're tired.
Yeah.
When you're maybe nursing an injury, you're in pain, and you're out in front of everybody.
Exactly.
I mean, you are being watched by all these people, and the pressure is on to perform, and you want to succeed, and you want to perform, and all those things are kind of conspiring against you, even psychologically, emotionally at that moment.
Right.
And to overcome that and turn things around is a pretty unnatural thing to be able to accomplish.
And that's why courage never appears here, because it's implied.
Okay.
If you are an athlete, that's exactly right. You are putting your failures on display. Now, that's a negative way to view,
I always feel bad as a live stream announcer when bad things happen or we make a mistake, and it's like, I feel like I have to say something that it happened, but I also know that the players rewatch the games afterwards, and that their mom is probably watching, and so
what's he saying about me?
I try to be very gentle, but we wrap our identity into some of these performance things, and this is a very visible deal. So there's a lot goes into that.
Absolutely, and that's what you experience too at the higher levels is by. It's just so understandable that their identity, players at the higher level, their identity is more wrapped up in their game, because it is like the high level players, the game is a bigger part of their life. Yeah. And even when you get into the college athletic world, I mean, a lot of people want to be a college athlete and they never get the chance to do it. So this is a big part of their lives and on a year-round basis. And so if they're not durable, because resilience kind of speaks to your durability. Yeah. If they're not durable, they're not going to make it. And so they have to have that way of managing themselves. And the best way to start with that is to be aware of it and to know what it means.
All right, so what's the next one?
Character in the center. And this is the block of the summer. We send them away with this after the spring season, because character, how we define it, is value what you believe when you're observed or alone, whether it's difficult or easy. And so getting up in the morning to do half-mile repeats through the summer is not fun. It just isn't. And you can pretend that running is fun. I hate running, and I ran for a long time. And so but you have to do that to prepare for the season. And so we say, if you work out in the summer, that is a tangible way. We can point to that behavior and say that is someone with character, because the coaches don't necessarily know what you've been doing over the summer. We're not allowed to check up. We're not texting the players every day and saying, hey, did you get that workout in? We can't do that. And so that's an
NCAA thing.
It's an NCAA thing. And so this is on the player. And so in those early mornings in June, when the season is still 2 months away, are they going to get up and do the things they need to do to prepare? Now, not everybody can do that because it's summer schedules, but where there's a will, we believe there's a way.
What is it you guys say about who will know if you skip a day?
The yo-yo test will know. And so that's for sure. So we do have accountability. I'm not sure if that was what you're asking.
No, well,
but
if you skip one day, I don't know how the whole saying goes, but if you skip one day, only you will know. If you skip 2 days, then your coach will know. If you skip 3 days, your opponent will know. If you skip 4 days or more, your grandma will know. I mean, everyone will know. So yeah, and it's a private choice that ends up with very public consequences.
Exactly.
I noticed this, not to use my son in every situation, but I noticed that before his freshman year, there were some initial emails about, hey, to be prepared for training camp, you need to be in shape and work out.
Right.
And, there was some of that late in the summer to get ready. And then there was the season. And then there was the second summer after the freshman year, and it was a whole different summer.
Whole ball game different.
Yeah, It was like, oh.
Right.
And so,
now he knows.
Yeah, and I think maybe some different results along with that.
Exactly. And so we have a way of testing them when they come back for a preseason. Day 2, it used to be day 1, but we know guys have bad travel schedules. Day 2, we test their capacity, and we do this in the yo-yo intermittent recovery test level 1. And that's basically a test where you keep running until you can't run anymore, and you have a time to make a certain shuttle distance. So we have a standard for that. Guys have to meet the standard. Right now the standard is 18.5, if anybody knows how the yo-yo test works, or you can Google it. And if we believe that they make that standard, that they are in a position where they are fit enough to last 90 minutes. That's as best we have been able to determine as coaches. We're still always reworking that because it's an imperfect system, but it's as close as we can get to it. So we will test them in the yo-yo intermittent recovery test, and then we also have a 300-yard shuttle run that they run as a fitness test of their anaerobic capacity. So it's basically, how hard can you go for roughly a minute, and we'll do that 3 times. Obviously, there's breaks in between, but this is our way of testing what they've been doing over the summer, and so the players know that. So that is their evaluation. And it basically says, what have you done over the summer? And without fail, the guys that have worked the hardest over the summer have the results they usually deserve in terms of how effective they are on the field. Now, we don't necessarily use their yo-yo score to determine the starting 11 because there's so many more demands of the game besides just fitness. But it tells us a lot about who they are as a person and what they can do as an athlete.
So what's the next level? What's the love and excellence at the next level in the pyramid?
Love and excellence. So this is a pyramid. Yes, we've talked about it being traits of a player, but every block here is biblically backed. So if you look at the pyramid up close, you'll see in the top right corner of each block there is a scripture reference, and that has close connection. It's essentially who Christ is. And so love is who Christ is. And so, because Christ is God, God is love. And so, if we're to do a pyramid that shows who Christ is, who God is, if we leave love or the love idea out of it, then we believe we inaccurately represent his nature. And so, love shows itself in actions. And so, we demonstrate love towards opponents. We play as hard as we can. We're going to try to win every game, but we don't play cheaply. We're not going to go out there and kick people and hurt them. Intentionally, because we've kicked people and hurt them unintentionally. We demonstrate love towards the referees. We totally ask questions, have conversations with the officials. That's part of the game, but don't disrespect them. Don't argue with them. You can just present a case. And so we try to enforce that as coaches, and we try to model that as coaches as best we can. And then we demonstrate respect towards coaches, abide by and support coaching decisions, and we demonstrate love towards teammates, make each other more effective, which ties back into our humility block at the foundation, which is why it's on the same side going down. And so I just wanted to double check my sources there. So that's why we have love as a quality of action. I think that's the first time
you've actually looked at the pyramid and all of this explanation.
Just wanted to be extra sure because that was what it was supposed to be, but just want to make sure the graphic is right. And then excellence goes back to a winning culture. The idea is to win. Now, we say process orientation, we preach that. we say be process oriented because we want to win the game, but we can't control winning. So let's control what we can control, and that will influence our ability to win the game. And so excellence is just that idea of just we do this in the best way we know how, and it's self-explanatory.
And if all of these blocks work together, then the very top, the pinnacle, is Christ-likeness, where you repeat some of the same values and you add things like respect and initiative and all of that character and patience and process orientation results in something spiritual like Christ-likeness.
Yeah.
How does that evidence itself then? Just all of these values together?
Every one of these values has a direct correlation to his character, to Christ's character. And so that is the ultimate goal of anything. And so if we put excellence at the top of the pyramid, if we put winning at the top of the pyramid, we lie, essentially. Like we cannot use Christ-like character to only have the ultimate goal of winning. That would be mislaid, and that's not his design. Whether therefore you eat or drink, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God, is what governs our mission statement as believers. This is a specific way to do that. We want to represent Christ on the soccer field. So becoming like him needs to be our ultimate goal, because we cannot remove soccer from the rest of the Christian life.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, I mean, we're sitting here talking about soccer, but the whole time I'm thinking we're not really just talking about soccer, are
No,
we?
absolutely
Are you seeing
not.
the same?
Well, absolutely. So what's happening here is you're displaying process orientation to soccer, but we literally see this in your work as a communicator for the department too. Like that's what I'm thinking through. The lens of your process, the work that you do to put in the hours on preparation, and I was even thinking about your initiative, the time that you spend in the summertime to prepare for the season, and the character that I'm not checking on you. Coach T's not checking on you. But as soon as the season starts, as a communicator, you've already got your stuff set up. You're ready to go. And then obviously there's a way to communicate in a loving way, and there's excellence in performance. There's deadlines, those kinds of things. And as an employee, man, I tell you what, this kind of pyramid is exactly our mission as a school, right? For our employees and for our students. We're wanting to produce this in all of our graduates.
A lot of companies have a list of core values that sits in a handbook somewhere that nobody looks at and nobody could repeat or know what they are. They never see them in action. They never talk about them, and they really don't fundamentally have any connection between what's written on the page and what actually goes out the door as their product or their service.
Right.
And so what you're working through is the nuts and bolts of how to put into action, something that's obviously very well thought out. You guys have spent a lot of time. And it's probably not the only way to visualize or operationalize these characteristics, but it kind of shows that there's a result in mind, but that result for the believer goes beyond material success.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the kind of longer lasting lesson or development that the student athlete at a Christian college or at Maranatha specifically is really benefiting from participation in that team. Your student athletes put in a lot of time, and you have demands on their schedule and on their life. It's disruptive in so many ways. But are they better off for that even if they don't go into soccer as their professional career afterwards?
We certainly hope so. Yes, and we believe so. Because this whole model, exactly, it has a direction. It's not just a list of virtues. And when we brainstormed this whole model as a team, the team came up with this. And so we have to give them direction. And the virtues described, the values described, have a foothold in Christ's character, and that applies to every area of life. And so the majority, the overwhelming majority of guys that come through are playing soccer at a competitive level for the last time when the whistle blows on the final game of their senior year. So if we don't give them something that they can take away and apply to other areas of life, we've failed as coaches. And that's why we believe that coaching in its essence is discipleship, which extends beyond this pyramid and goes more into the coaching philosophy. But absolutely, this is, and we'll communicate that to guys on a private level, is this will help them become better husbands, if that's what God has for them, and better dads, if that's what God has for them, better employees, better Christians.
So one of the things that I love about the pyramid, as you talked about the two different sides, and on the excellence piece near the top, excellence will look different in different stages of life. Excellence will look different in different roles that you play throughout your life in different jobs.
Right.
And if they can learn all of these descriptors as a process with the end goal of Christ-likeness instead of the end goal of excellence, that makes everything else fall into the correct balance. We talk a lot about work-life balance. When you want to talk about player-life balance, that's rough. And for college athletes, it's kind of a joke. We talk about that with different majors, with different athletic teams, that they have things out of whack, but it's not out of whack because they have a process in mind. And if the process ends, like you said, with a cup at the end of the season, then everything just stops because they're not going to play professionally. They got the banner, now what? But if the end is Christ-likeness, they can use that same framework, the same pyramid when they graduate, and whether or not they got the cup, now they have a process to move towards life with excellence in a different stage of life. And to me, that's win. That's a win.
Exactly. And that's why only 2 blocks on this pyramid have a soccer-specific word in their definition. And that's why when we say excellence, execute the controllables to the best of your ability. That's how we define it. So that implies that to the best of your ability, everybody has a different capacity at the moment because skills can improvement.
Right.
And that applies to every area of life. Exactly. And so you could slightly tweak those 2 definitions and you truly have a non-soccer specific model. But we're soccer specific, so it behooves us to have soccer specific wording.
Exactly.
I saw this in action earlier this year. During the season, I had the chance to travel with the team to Iowa, and we had a back-to-back. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that time we went to Iowa? Hey, do you remember that time we went to India?
I do remember that time we went to India.
With the soccer team? That was awesome.
That could be a whole nother podcast right there.
Well,
Sights and sounds.
Time. But it was October 7th and 8th. So we had a Friday game against Emmaus, and then we had a Saturday game. And we had beat Emmaus earlier in the season at our place 7-1. And I think at that point they were kind of struggling in the season. And so we saw that Friday game as, one that we probably could kind of pencil in a little bit.
Right.
And we had, in the very first part of the game, I wasn't nervous at all. I'm watching that game. We controlled possession. I don't think the ball was on their half once.
Right.
And then they countered, and they had that one guy, I don't know what his name is, but he was so fast, and he just got behind the defense and scored. And it was like, wait, what? We're losing?
Right.
And I think then we went down I think it was 2-1. We end up clawing back a tie, right?
Right.
Which was a pretty disappointing tie. I think we ended up tying 3-3 or something like that.
Yeah.
The next day, we've got to go and play another school in Iowa, down the road a little ways. And, I saw the guys coming out of the Emmaus game, nervous. All of a sudden, whoa, what just happened? They were a little shell-shocked. And even after the game, I heard you talking to one of our captains, and he was like, the referees, the field, and you're like, hey, control the controllables. Right. You can't mess. And all of a sudden, all the discussion was about these issues on the pyramid.
Right.
And I saw that in action, and it was like, yep. And I saw it almost visually, reorienting the thinking. They stopped questioning. They said, all right, we got to focus because tomorrow's an even tougher test.
Right.
And, of course, there's certain descriptions out on the internet of the glorious victory that inspired that transpired on that Saturday, to take away all the cookies, 2-0 win on that Saturday. It was a huge turnaround.
Yes, it was.
It was really more of I would say a tougher environment, a tougher opponent, and yet a very different result.
Very different result. And if it wasn't for having having values that we look back on, having anchoring points, and things that we will refocus your efforts, we spiral out of control in those ways. And so a 3-3 tie against a team that we beat somewhere along the lines of 7-1, and we've beaten by a bigger margin in the past, that can be derailing.
Yeah.
Especially if you feel like the game was a little bit out of your control, you're blaming referees, the field is bad. That can make you lose control in your perception.
Right.
And so you absolutely have to have something that refocuses you and makes you resilient, focus on the next, on the present, not the uncontrollable past or future. All these things tie into making you an effective athlete. Yeah. And so that's exactly why this is in place, is because it helps you on the field.
And it's fun to win.
It's fun to win. Exactly.
We won't lie.
Exactly.
And that's as good a place to end it as always. Thank you for your dedication and commitment. I love seeing the success God's given you as you continue to pursue your playing career. Although with a wife on the way and life happening, we'll see what happens in the future with that.
We will see.
Clock's ticking, buddy. But it has been awesome to follow that progress, and really thank you for your commitment to the student athletes, the men and the women that you work with, and thank you for your commitment to really all the sports through your position with the communications aspect of it. You strike that balance of making it a big deal without giving people too big a head to become like, oh, I'm the big man on campus type thing. That's a real balance, isn't it, sometimes in the athletics world?
It really is. Can't give too much credit. Got to keep them humble, right?
Absolutely. And you do a great job with all of that. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time today.
Everything is a privilege and a gift, so it's a pleasure to be on here.
Let's do it again sometime.
That sounds good.
All right.
Thank you for joining us today. On Mission is a production of Maranatha Baptist University. Subscribe to On Mission on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review, as this will help other growing leaders find these conversations. For information about our guests, previous episodes, and general information about On Mission or MBU, go to mbu.edu/podcast. Join us again next week as we examine what keeps leaders on mission.